I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets, yeah. Better move out the way, cause I'm coming.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the KP3 Community Podcast. Exciting topic tonight. We're going to be talking about intent and weighted balls. Title of this one is Weighted Ball Throwing Mistake Most Make. This was an eye-opener for me about 2 years ago, and I've detailed this a little bit in some of our discussions on KP3 Community over the years. Weighted baseballs in general. So you have weighted baseballs, which are like the leather-covered baseballs, and you have plyo-care balls. I think weighted baseballs are mostly used today for running guns and velocity phases, maybe some command training, while plyo-care balls are used for this sort of pre-throw routine. And everybody feels like they have to have a plyo-care pre-throw routine. So tonight's discussion is about rethinking that pre-throw routine from a workload management standpoint, and then also optimizing that. When we start talking about intent, we really start to understand where we place that plyo-care routine to optimize adaptation and skill development. So that's going to be our discussion tonight on that. We have an AMA. We're going to be talking about internal braces. This is a question that I actually got yesterday. Super intriguing question, the way that MiLB teams are looking at internal brace. There's a discussion that needs to be had here, and we have dealt with it internally at KP. This question came from somebody outside. I won't mention the name, but I found out that they're dealing with the same thing I dealt with and with one of our athletes, and it's sort of disappointing, but something I think players should be aware of and food for thought on really how do we navigate as a player, protecting ourselves and making sure that we do the right thing for the longevity of our career in terms of internal brace, regular Tommy John surgery, etc. So we'll talk about that as well. That's on the AMA. So without further ado, let's dive into tonight. Our main topic, intent plus weighted balls. We're going to talk about it. All right. So I gave this presentation every week. We do a presentation at KP. We have 12-week stints. So summer and winter, we give this presentations 12 weeks of what we call EDUs. So this EDU, first one we started off with this week was intent. So intent, this is an interesting topic. I think it's something that's not talked about enough. Something that as an athlete, when you get it, you kind of have that aha moment, and you can really kind of think back at all the wasted reps. In terms of throwing or lifting, all the wasted time in terms of you just kind of spinning your wheels and sitting idle in places. And so this discussion intent is going to lead to our discussion around those plyo-care throws and why I think we need to rethink them. So intent in sports performance is a deliberate, focused, and purposeful effort our athlete brings to an action with the aim of maximizing performance. It combines physical intensity, mental focus, and clear purpose in every movement or decision. All right, I'm going to shrink that back down now that I've read it. So now that we have a clear definition of intent, right? I like the in there, clear purpose in every movement or decision. So I love that at the end. So here we go. So we have commitment to purpose, and we have good and bad. I tell our athletes all the time, we talk about our skill acquisition model at KP, assess, feel, drill. And basically what I tell our athletes is if you walk into doing drills and you don't understand the assess component of things, meaning you don't understand quote unquote good versus bad, then you can't do reps that have purpose. At the end of the day, we have to commit to the purpose. We're trying to get better at this thing, whatever it is. Could be lead leg block, could be working on a curveball and trying to get the right shape of that curveball. Whatever the thing is that you're doing, you have to have the purpose behind it to say, I am going to do X. And you have to commit your intention to actually doing that singular task. So far too often, I mean, just way too often, we have guys throwing bullpens where, we're asking them to focus on a specific thing. And then they throw a pitch and they miss the zone by a foot or whatever it is, or they don't throw it as hard as they want to, and they get upset. And that tells me immediately, when I tell an athlete, I need you to focus on something with an internal focus, for example, I need you to cue trying to hold the trunk closed. Let's just say that's going to be the thing that we're focusing on today. I give you a cue when you're trying to hold that trunk closed. I need all of your focus on trying to hold that trunk closed. When you make the pitch, I really don't care about the outcome that much in the moment if we're trying to hold that trunk closed and we're trying to get that right. So oftentimes I'll see as an athlete, they'll make the pitch, they were trying to hold that trunk closed, and they see the outcome and they get upset. They get visibly shaken. They're like, that's such a terrible pitch. Da, 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 da. And I go, okay, hold on a second. I didn't ask you about the outcome. What was the focus? What's the goal? What's the purpose of this bullpen today? And the purpose of the time that I allotted, the volume of throws that I created for this athlete, was for them to focus on the trunk. But again, they're focusing on the wrong thing. So that feedback loop, when they make that pitch and that trunk is perfectly closed, I need it to be good versus bad. And this needs to happen all throughout their plyo care throws, their drill work. This needs to happen all throughout their catch play. Each portion of our throwing day needs to have a specific purpose. This is where most people mess up. I think we have far too many, like 90% of our throwing as baseball pitchers, 90% of our throwing, I would argue, has no purpose. It's just roll out there and just throw it. This is why you hear coaches constantly yelling, hit the guy in the chest, focus, hit the guy in the chest, hit the guy in the chest. Because at the very least, if we know that if you're focused on hitting the guy in the chest, you have some sort of purpose to this throw. You have some sort of intent. So when we think about this in terms of adaptation, it's not just hit the guy in the chest. We can refocus our athletes onto other things. And this is how we should actually be spending our volume. Not just going out there and throwing till you're warmed up over 50 throws and then trying to get 10 throws on the mound where you actually focus on the skill. Again, I've watched coaches time and time again. They just, hey, go get loose real quick. Go warm up real quick. Now, hold on a second. You're about to spend 50 throws. That's like the average that I see guys warm up. About 50 throws. Go warm up real quick is not the statement. Set the intention for that athlete to understand exactly what they're trying to do for the day so they have a purpose. And then each and every single rep of the day, imagine if you have 100 throws in the day and each one of those reps, you're thinking good versus bad, focused on the purpose. That's a much different training atmosphere. That's a much different training model and a lot quicker route to that skill acquisition than just go warm up and I'll see you in just a minute. We think so often we have to do it over the mound. We do not. We think so often that just the 20 throws we throw in plyo, the 10 throws we throw off the mound, that these are going to actually be the difference makers. They are not. Hey guys, I just want to take a second and shout out our sponsor for this episode, BP Zones. For years, we were buying targets monthly at KP due to the volume of pitches that we throw at them. On top of that, I just never liked the visual or the lack of options that exist in traditional targets. I'm thankful that we found BP Zones to not only save us money with elastic products, but also provide our staff the ability to uniquely challenge our athletes. BP Zones are a staple at KP and can be a game changer for you as well. For more on BP Zones, or if you'd like to purchase one, you can by clicking the link for BP Zones via the caption below. So let's focus on this, and I think this is pretty obvious from my last statements, but one unfocused throw in the offseason. Here you go. So I talk about this a lot, filling the bubble. So imagine this is just a big bubble, and we're trying to fill this bubble. So skill acquisition, so us actually acquiring the skill that we're looking for means that we have to fill this entire bubble up. So one unfocused throw in the offseason, this red, it's going to be like, let's just say a small throw, right? Or a small change in terms of filling this bubble versus this is, again, more of this unfocused throwing. If we have an unfocused or low intent throws that you would make in offseason, imagine the more time that we spend, like 90% of this, right? It actually just makes this white. So all this red would just change to white. It just opens the problem for us, which is either we're not doing enough to move the needle, or It's just, again, wasted time. We don't want that either way. So again, let's imagine that we're trying to fill this bubble. A bunch of low intent throws would be all these little tiny dots. So this would mean that we need more volume. So if you have really low intent throws, you're going to need a lot of volume in order to potentially change that thing over time. What you're basically asking is that over time, your body kind of naturally adapts to doing this thing over time. Versus if you're thinking mentally about trying to really change this thing and you're putting a high intent behind it, the adaptation will be a lot different. So again, low intent throws requires a lot more volume versus high intent throws, where each one of these big green dots is going to fill a lot more space and get us a lot closer to our goal. So these high intent throws are what we really want. Now, that's not to say that we don't have low intent throws in the day. Sometimes, we have to acknowledge the fact that our athletes are human. They're not going to be perfectly focused on every single rep with the peak of intensity. But our job as coaches should be to do two things. One, set the program in place where it encourages high intensity. High intent, not high intensity, high intent. And then number two, we should be encouraging our athletes. Steve Magnus had a great post. If you don't follow Steve Magnus, he's authored some books and has a great page. Shout out to Steve Magnus. But Steve Magnus had a great post the other day and talked about how coaches intuitively know that they can drive intent. And basically the purpose of this was scientifically they were showing that our brains basically light up and start to tell our body to move into like a fight or flight or release chemicals to basically make our body do more. And so coaches give you a pep talk before a game, and we intuitively know this. If I get somebody, it's a big moment, I try to give them a pep talk to give them a little bit of an edge to get out there on the field to get themselves all riled up. You see football players doing the same thing, banging their heads against the locker or whatever with a helmet on. This is what Steve Magnus was talking about. And basically what he knows is that, at the end of the day, coaches, again, intuitively know how to get their athletes pumped up. That pumping up of your athlete gets them mentally, cognitively in a place where, their brain is releasing chemicals that are going to help them perform at their highest level. So at the end of the day, we have a job as coaches. One, again, set the expectation. Make sure the program is right. Make sure we're giving the athlete the environment and tasks that make the most sense for them to have the peak level intent so that we have a lot more of these big green bubbles. Now, on the other side of it, we also have to understand our role as coaches. Sometimes when our athletes seem a little down, we have to find a way to get over there and use our language, our coaching skills to actually get those athletes up. We have to get them moving. And so as a coach, you're looking for these things constantly, and we have to understand, again, going back to this concept of intent, if we set the expectation right and this athlete's showing up with a low intent or a low focus for the day, we have to ask why. There's a lot of things behind that I won't get into today. But we also have to find a way to try to get the most out of that athlete that day. And there are great coaches out there, great coaches. This is what they do the best. They get their most out of their athletes on a day in and day out basis. I only hope that my athletes look at me that way, that I could get the most out of them on a regular basis. It's something that I study, I try to do, and I highly encourage all of you to try to find out how you move that needle as well. So with that being said, let's close that out. Let's bring up a throwing program real quick. And now we're going to get into how do we leverage this with workload management? So how can workload management help aid us in this process? And so what you're going to see here is an example. This is a template of a throwing program that I put together. And I don't recommend you copy this or use it. This is for a very specific athlete for very specific reasons. But you'll see how I kind of lay out our throwing programs and how I flip some things here to match intensity. So different than intent, I match intensity and intent together to try to drive adaptation for things that we're looking for. So intensity, let's talk about that word real quick to make sure we understand this. Intensity is basically the effort that you're giving for the actual rep itself. And then intent, as we mentioned earlier, is defining that purpose and having that high focus on purpose. So we have intensity and intent. Let's keep those two things separate here. So what you're going to notice on this chart is at the very top of this chart, you see pivot picks, roll-ins, elevations. These are very low intensity efforts for us. So what we're looking for from these, like a pivot pick, for example, typically we'll see our guys do this at like 45 miles an hour. So that's like a 20% effort. And we have purposes here. So guys that are doing, for example, arm action stuff, are focusing on trunk or glove side, we like to start them off with pivot picks. Very low effort. They're using a heavier implement in this case, 1 pound, 2 pound balls. And this is how they typically start their program. So they'll do reverse throws and they'll move into pivot picks for the day. Now, this is where we differ. And so I want to bring this to, again, the focus of intent. I watch athletes all the time, and you probably do too. I watch athletes all the time. They finish with their reverse throws. They do pivot picks because that's just sort of the norm. And then they jump into a series of 4, 5, 6 different drill progressions. And they do all of these things, mostly because they watched a video online that said, if you want to gain velocity, do these 5 things. And there's a whole progression of drill work. And they spend like a volume of 50 throws. So they jump from a pivot pick, which you would see at like 20%. They jump from a pivot pick all the way up to like a roll in at 70% effort. Now, this is a problem. If I'm programming properly, and like you see here, let's look at day 1, for example. We have our 10 throws in the pivot pick, and you see me go to catch play with these guys and build 30%, 40%, 50%. And then I have from there our movement 1, which is a drill progression that I give our athletes. So movement 1 would be 1 drill that I give our athletes. And you'll see that I don't devise a lot of drills. So you have pivot pick, catch play, where we build up, and then we move into our movement. And I try to get some volume in that movement, and then I take them over to gamification or pin work or whatever. Now, the thing that I have against plyos in some cases is that, again, most athletes don't know how to regulate or how to govern intensity with plyos. And so what you see is a pivot pick at 20%, and I'll tell them to do a roll in, and they'll do a roll in at like 70%. And that's a problem. We're jumping in terms of intensity. We're kind of shocking the system. And when we start to talk about intent, again, we can agree that this athlete can move from a pivot pick, and if the right drill is selected, yeah, you could jump to 70% and potentially do throws with high intent. But I don't like my athletes making that big of an intensity jump. So what I try to do instead is I'll go pivot pick for 10 for 20%. And then I'll go into the catch play, and I'll have a purpose for the catch play. And I'll have a radar gun set up in our facility to monitor the intensity. So that's one way of doing it. And I'll tell guys, here's your velocity zone for these intensities, for these percentages. And so 20%, 30%, 40%, 20% would be like 45 to 50 miles per hour. 45 to 55 miles per hour. 30% would be 55 to 60. Then you go 60, 65, 65, 70. And so you build up every 5 miles an hour base. So that's one way of doing it. So I like to see my athletes build up this way. What I try to do is I try to make their catch play purposeful. So in our facility, you'll see big targets on a wall. So we'll have athletes play catch to those targets. That's one thing that they can do. I don't love indoor throwing that much, but we have to do it by nature of the beast. So we try to make sure that every throw has a target to it. We'll also do things like drill work or modified versions, some more constrained versions of our drills at that 30% intensity. Remember the intensity. So if I do a constrained drill, I get into a smaller constrained position, right? I can get through 30% intensity because it's not that hard of a throw. You also see, like plyos, you also see a lot of guys jump to the line and they start throwing with high intensity with limited intent in catch play. And so governing this progression in a certain way makes sense. We build our athletes up more appropriately. We give them a focus in terms of the intent for the day for those catch play throws. This is actually a benefit to those of you that are in facilities. So again, I don't love in-facility throws, but I can drive a ton of intent because the throwing progression is into a net or into a specific target. And I can kind of change the focus of that athlete. Versus if they're playing catch with somebody else, you're sometimes, by way of playing catch with somebody else, you're at the mercy of whatever they're doing or how fast they're backing up those things. It's now two people trying to do either two different things or two similar things. And so that can bring in some chaos to this as well. But point here is that you'll see where I put movement 1. That is the first true drill work. So I get them through pivot pick. I have them move through their catch play. Let's call it like a medium. We work to like a medium intensity. And then I try to drive intent. I try to get them to understand intent through some of our drill work by giving them a higher overall intensity for the day to do that drill work with. And I put it on the back end of their catch play so that they're built up, they're warmed up, they're not trying to, kind of feel out how ready they are to actually do this drill. Then I moved to gamification. And so this is what I really wanted to get to. So again, you see from the beginning, the difference in plyo care throws. We're not ripping 60 plyos into a screen just to rip 60 plyos into a screen. We have a very specific progression that is laid out because of the actual drill work we're trying to accomplish with this athlete, the adaptation we're trying to drive with this athlete. So we move from pivot picks to catch play to then movement 1, which would be that first drill that we would do. And then we jump into gamification. So here's really the key to our throwing programs. This is maybe big secret, not big secret, but here's really the key to our throwing programs. And this is where I think we're different. We gamify a lot. We focus on movement specific and then try to blend it into gamification a lot. And so what I try to get athletes to do is really focus, again, the big mistake on plyos, to clarify what the lead of this video is. The big focus is in the mistake of throwing a bunch of plyos early or throwing a bunch of weighted balls in a catch play session early with no real intent, no real focus or purpose as to why we're doing it in the first place. We drive the intention of what we're trying to actually accomplish from a skill acquisition standpoint. And then we have to devise the strategy to get that out. I watch a lot of kids, like I said, a lot of kids will throw those plyos at a higher intensity early, but there's also a lot of kids that will throw plyos from 5 feet away from the net, and they'll throw them at a super low intensity very early because they're not warmed up yet. Again, I like to bake our movement expectations, our drill work, on the backside of that catch play. They're warmed up. There's no reason they don't get to the intensity that I want them to. I try to hold them in a velocity range while they're doing that motion, that movement, that drill work, and then I actually get with them as part of these skill specifics. So coaches, we're used to oftentimes having our athlete go through catch play, then jumping to the mound, and we work with them on the mound in a short box or a bullpen or whatever that is. What I'm saying is you can actually take that time and you can work through 10 throws first with the drill specific, and then you can get into gamification. And so you'll see on the left side is the movement in this column, and on the right side is the gamification. And so you'll see gamification laid out. You'll also see, it says at the top, skill specific work. So this is also bullpens laid out and for our athletes here as well. So the gamification model for us, we do a lot of short box work at like 70% intensity. We do a lot of bullpen work where we actually track, how did you command the baseball or how are you competing against other guys? And because we do group training at KP, one of the great things about this is all the gamification is typically with a partner. And so you'll see we have these target games that we'll play with the top shelf targets. We'll put them on our BP zone. And these guys will throw and try to hit those top shelf targets, and they'll get 2 points. They'll get awarded for hitting that green target. They'll get 1 point for hitting the BP zone. They'll get negative points for missing outside of the post. Those are gross misses. We're trying to get rid of those. And what we do is we basically tell our athletes, like, hey, I want you to go in and I want you to just compete. And so there's a lot of competition. We try to shift their focus once we get to that gamification. We try to shift their focus back to just focusing on pitching, making sure that we win those reps. Now, I don't do this with every athlete. This athlete that you see here that I created this program for, we could have been much, much more direct into specific intent. So, for example, if I was working arm action with this athlete, we would have gone pivot picks, we would have gone to roll-ins, for example, and then maybe I do something like a high intensity roll in, or more often, we would have maybe spent more time focused on different arm patterning or arm work. If it was just like a full month of nothing but mechanical focus. In this case, this athlete's kind of transitioning into his pitch design phase. He's kind of gotten to a point where he's proven to me that he's got this arm action down. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically blending. I'm going, hey, we're going to focus early during all of your catch play, all of your warm up, your early work. We're going to get you warmed up. We're going to move through the skill specific. I'm going to take 10 throws with you, make sure we have that locked in still. He's got most reps are good. Throws a pitch, good. Throws a pitch, good. Throws a pitch, good. So I'm able to now shift him. He's more of an advanced athlete as well as in college. I'm able to shift him into the gamification. I go, hey, great. Now I want you to go focus on commanding the baseball, spinning pitches, etc. So he has a different focus at the end of his day. The beginning of his day is still very focused on that thing that we've developed over the last couple of months. So again, notice I said months. We need to have, again, intent within each specific portion of our program. And this is exactly how we lay it out. So again, big mistake I see with athletes, and something for you as coaches out there, you as players out there, parents out there, all to be aware of, is when we shift our movement, our drill work to the backside of catch play, we build up our overall intensity throughout the day into that work. We start to see better understanding of movement quality because athletes aren't throwing at 30% intensity and trying to acquire a skill that we need to actually express at 100%. We are seeing change. We're seeing athletes getting closer to actually being able to express the real speed, the real movement, and that's a different approach. And again, you could do it at the beginning of your day, pivot picks, and then jump right into roll-ins, etc. But I'd argue the intensity progression there is maybe not right. So creating these segments to refocus yourself, drive high intent, accomplishing from a movement standpoint what we're trying to accomplish. I think this is probably the right way to do it. Again, a little biased. It's how we do it here at KP, but hopefully something to think about. And then also building these programs. I'm going to go back to the last screen here. Building these programs, you notice how I have them all broken out under the specific workloads for that day. So when I build an athlete up more and I'm able to increase his schedule in terms of total volume for the day and his schedule, it gives me more time to try to acquire that skill with that athlete, getting more volume and put him where he needs to be. So there's a huge benefit to making sure we have athletes built up enough. Gives us more volume to try to train that athlete with. Those are all really important things for us to kind of pay attention to as we go through the day. So that is, with that, our intent plus weighted balls discussion today. Hopefully you got something out of that. Hopefully helps you rethink sort of the throwing strategy that we're implementing with our athletes on a daily basis. Don't just accept the industry norms. I know that's the case. I know a lot of guys, they just see that everybody else is doing it that way. Or a lot of coaches just read a book that says, here's how to do it weighted balls. And that book says that, you should do this before you throw. And the concepts there are that we're trying to blend it into our catch play, blend it into the mound work, etc. I get all of that. I'm just saying that if you really stop and think about it, intensity progressions probably don't make sense doing it that way. And then on top of that, there's nothing to say that we can't execute catch play with intent, and we can't execute catch play with a different shift in terms of our focus of drill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, let's move on to our AMA today. And I want to talk a little bit about this question that I got yesterday. This is fascinating to me. I'll give you some context on this. So I had an athlete about 2 years ago now show up, and he had just gotten the internal brace put in. And this athlete got healthy, was back to throwing bullpens full time, and man, his bullpens are unbelievable. The fact that this athlete didn't have a contract for me was shocking. I mean, I thought it was going to be very easy when he first came in to get him back into affiliated baseball. He had AAA experience as well. I expected this athlete to be in the big leagues. I mean, he had that kind of stuff. What I noticed was every time he talked to a team, there was some hesitancy. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I was like, man, I don't understand what they don't see. And it really wasn't, what I found out was it really wasn't about stuff. So this athlete got an opportunity with an organization. They did a medical, and what they found was that this brace was maybe not where they wanted it to be. And they said that it was a matter of time before this athlete got hurt. And that made me scratch my head. I was like, man, maybe they know something I don't. I started asking questions to some others as well. Maybe they know something I don't. It's like, that just doesn't make sense. And so yesterday I get a phone call, and this phone call is about asking the question of another player. So this person is trying to see how to phrase this properly, but this question was asking a question about another player, and the same scenario had happened. This athlete had gotten released. Upon getting released, it was recommended by the organization to get the internal brace, and this athlete was trying to get back and play again, and they were being told that their elbow was basically a ticking time bomb. And that doesn't sit well with me. So number one, organization told these players to get the internal brace. So the organizations that released them told them to get the internal brace, in agreement with an orthopedic, obviously. But two, these athletes come back, they prove their elite level arms, that they're healthy. They did the full rehab, come back, prove that they're fully healthy, ready to compete, and showcasing great stuff. So the stuff isn't the problem. The numbers aren't the problem. The problem is the team looks at these athletes as ticking time bombs. That's their quote. You could look at any athlete, any pitcher, as a ticking time bomb. I have guys that I watch come into our facility or train elsewhere. They're throwing 95 to 100 as 17, 18-year-olds. They're playing perfect game events every weekend. They're the number one pitcher on their high school team, and they're throwing 110 pitches a week. You could argue that any athlete, and if you do MRIs on pretty much any athlete, you're going to find some damage. You could argue any athlete is a ticking time bomb. So for the fact that these athletes got an internal brace, they're saying that this internal brace is not holding. The new organizations are when they do the physicals. And so the old organization, the one that they got released by, is the one that told them to get the internal brace in the first place. This athlete has done nothing but what he should. And they're being punished. They're being blacklisted for it. This is a new concern for me that I have never really, until recent, even thought about as a concern. Athletes getting internal braces is maybe not the route. It is a quicker return, seems to be something that is of benefit to the athlete in the short term to put them back on the field quicker. But the stigma from MLB organizations, it's unbelievable. So I start to ask the question, is the internal brace a good decision for a pitcher? If you're going under the knife and you're going to get that area repaired in any way, shape, or form, maybe just do the complete reconstruction. It seems that it's more favorable to MLB teams. I think the MLB teams are wrong on this. I think it's very unfair that the MLB teams in this manner are looking at athletes and determining that they are unfit to play when they are doing nothing but proving that they are fit to play. And then they're saying you're a ticking time bomb. And you can make that case about any UCL, brace or no brace, no construction, like just healthy guys that have never had a problem. You could argue that anybody's a ticking time bomb in this game. I mean, we have like over 50% of pitchers like getting Tommy John surgery. That's absurd. Anybody's a ticking time bomb. Anybody could have Tommy John surgery tomorrow. We don't have an answer to that yet. Our injury rates are skyrocketing, and you're taking this out on somebody who has an internal brace because you're uncertain about the surgery, because you don't want to pay for a potential full reconstruction or lose that athlete for a year's time. I get that. I could get behind that. But you have no proof that the internal brace is not going to hold. You're just taking guesses. So, I mean, in the first place, we should be telling all of our athletes, if that's going to be the thing, we should be telling all of our athletes, don't touch the internal brace. Get a full reconstruction. We should never be pointing our athletes in that direction. And MLB orgs are telling athletes to get an internal brace, and then those guys are getting released, and then they're getting sent out, and another team won't touch them. I don't think this is the right thing. And I'm bringing some light to it because, again, I'm a little irritated for the players' sake that this is what's going on. It needs to be talked about more. If the internal brace is not going to be a good enough surgery for athletes to hold longevity in return, or if the internal brace is going to be looked at and you're going to get blackballed for getting the internal brace, then we have a problem. And we need to talk about if it's going to be accepted as a medical procedure for pitchers to get back on the mound with, then we need to find a way to make sure that teams can't blacklist players because they have an internal brace. That's not okay. I mean, look, at the end of the day, R.A. Dickey didn't even have a UCL, and he signed some contracts, right? I mean, knuckleballer, sure, but that guy didn't have a UCL. How many UCLs in the MLB right now are damaged to a level at which we would say they are a ticking time bomb? Probably quite a few. How many high school kids are going to get drafted this year in July have a UCL that's damaged to a point that they would be considered a ticking time bomb? I don't get it. I just don't. I don't understand why certain players are going to be blacklisted for internal brace discussion. I'm curious how many of you out there have run into the same issue. If you have, maybe me and this other person just happened to share something that was unique. But I don't think it is. I think there are a number of players that are getting evaluated in a physical, getting blacklisted because of the internal brace. And I think it needs to be brought to light, and we need to be transparent with those players that are getting released because of Tommy John surgery, fighting their way back, getting better in many cases, fighting their way back, getting healthy, doing everything they've been asked of, and then being rejected for an opportunity in the future. I think that's just wrong. And we need to bring some light to it. So if you've had that problem, I'd love to hear from you. support@kineticprobaseball.com or casey@kineticprobaseball.com on email. I would love to hear from you. You can comment down below. So if it's more private, email me. If you've heard of it and you're just watching this and you want to comment in, please comment down below on this. It just doesn't settle with me. And I think we need to have a conversation. If you're a kid today and you do have an opportunity, if you do have the problem of having to go through Tommy John surgery and you have an opportunity to get the full reconstruction versus the brace, I maybe push you to do a full reconstruction. It might take longer, but it might save your career for the long term. With that being said, let's move over to the wrap tonight and close this thing out. As always, guys, if you haven't already, please go over to our website, check out the KP3 Community. It's a tab on our site. We have annual subscription. We have a lifetime subscription. We have the Future of Arm Care course with our KP bands. If you haven't checked out our KP bands yet, a couple episodes back, I talk about our KP bands at length. So go check that out. Check out our landing page on our website for KP bands. Under the products tab, you'll see basically what the difference maker is in our KP bands. Check it out on our KP3 community in our course, The Future of Arm Care. We talk all about how we built that band's protocol, and why it's so important that you auto-regulate. You have a dynamic training model day in and day out in your arm care. It's something so different within the game, but so needed. Our Winning with Workload course is also up there. I'll be updating that again shortly with some new stuff coming out. Excited. I had some great feedback from the last couple of updates from some people. So really excited to get some new information on there, some new, more applicable information. How do you apply workload to what you're doing? And then we also have, again, for free. So if you're watching this and you want some free resource, you want to learn more about workload, I left our official response to the MiLB open for free on our KP3 community. So if you hit that KP3 community tab on our website, you can find that official response to the MiLB injuries report, where I detail in 58 pages why the MiLB injury report is not right, and where my differing perspective is. Again, all respect to MiLB for what they did putting it out. I just wanted to have, I wanted to say it in a different way. I didn't want to demonize velocity. I didn't want to demonize pitch design. I wanted to show what really causes injury, and so I talk about that at length. So definitely check that out. I think that you will enjoy that read if you haven't already checked it out. With that being said, guys, as always, appreciate you guys. If you liked this episode or any of our others, I don't ask for subscribing. I don't ask for likes. Here's what I ask from you. If this has been helpful, please share it. I just want this information to get out to athletes. I think discussions like the long toss discussion and understanding intent and plyo care, when do you mix all those pieces together, I think those discussions need to be had more at length. We need to start to understand workload management in throwing and re-strategize our athletes' perspective, re-strategize their workflow throughout the day, change their perspective, and how they approach their throwing to save arms for the long term. Our mission at KP is to help the next generation and to make sure that they don't go through what I went through in Tommy John surgery. And I believe a big part of that is reconfiguring the thought processes and the norms that fall within the baseball industry. So again, if you've gotten some value out of this today, please share it, get it out there. And I would love to hear from you guys as well for more AMA and or from any questions that you have about applications from this episode. So as always, guys, appreciate you. Let's keep climbing.